Okay. Let's unpack this. I really want you to picture a very specific scene. It's December 2022, Friday, December 21st, to be exact.
Right.
You're sitting in a hotel room in Paris, you're checking your phone, and you get a text message from a man who has just landed in the country.
Yeah, on Boxing Day, I think it was.
Exactly, right around then.
Yeah.
And he sends you a photo of his breakfast. It's this incredibly simple spread. Some salami, a wedge of cheese, a few prunes.
Sounds nice.
Right. And then he texts you about how much he's enjoying his first proper bath in years.
It honestly sounds like, it sounds like an old friend catching up after a long backpacking trip, doesn't it? Mundane, almost cozy.
Yeah, except the man sending that text is Charles Sobhraj,
The Serpent.
the man the world knows as the Serpent, or the Bikini Killer, the
Right.
Splitting Killer, a man linked to at least 20 murders across Asia in the 1970s.
It's wild.
He is 78 years old here. He has just walked out of a high-security prison in Nepal, and he is treating his return to society like a celebrity press tour.
It is entirely surreal. But that text message, that banal focus on his own comfort while the whole world is reeling from his release, it perfectly encapsulates the man we are analyzing today.
It really does, which is why we're doing this deep dive.
Right. We have pulled together a massive stack of sources for you today. We're looking at recent news reports on his release from Al Jazeera and The Guardian.
We've also got biographical details, criminological studies, and
we can't ignore the pop culture angle. So we're looking at the recent Netflix adaptation, The Serpent, and the 2025 Indian series, Black Warrant.
And our mission here isn't just to, retell the gory details of a true crime story.
No, because the details are out there. If you want a horror story, you can easily find it. What we really need to understand is the psychology of it all.
The mechanism of the man.
Exactly. How does a chameleon basically exploit the hippie trail of the 1970s? How does he manipulate international legal systems for decades? And why is he now actively attempting to rewrite his own history?
So let's start right there at the end, or, well, the new beginning, depending on how you look at it. December 2022. He walks free.
Right.
I think for most of us, looking at a guy serving multiple life sentences for murder, the math just doesn't add up. How does a convicted serial killer just walk out due to good behavior after 19 years?
It basically comes down to a specific legal lever in Nepal. It's called the Senior Citizen Act.
Okay.
And it's actually quite a compassionate piece of legislation intended for low-risk elderly prisoners. The law states that if a prisoner is over 75 years old and has served 75% of their sentence, they are eligible for compassionate release.
So it's not really a loophole per se, it's just the actual statute.
Correct. Sobhraj was 78. He had served 19 years of a 20-year sentence. But it wasn't just automatic. His legal team played the health card very, very aggressively.
Heart surgery, right.
Yeah. The court ruling specifically cited that he needed open heart surgery and was suffering from severe heart disease. They essentially argued that keeping a sick, frail, elderly man incarcerated was a violation of his basic human rights.
So he checks all the boxes. Old, sick, time served. The Supreme Court of Nepal agrees, and he gets deported to France immediately because he holds French citizenship.
Right.
But this is where the whole frail old man narrative completely falls apart for me.
So, completely.
Because he doesn't go into a nursing home. He doesn't go quietly into the night. He goes on the offensive.
Immediately. That text about the salami in the bathtub, that was sent to a journalist. He wasn't hiding in shame. He was actively broadcasting his freedom.
He was giving interviews on the actual flight to Paris.
He was. He told reporters he felt great and that his first order of business was to sue the state of Nepal. He claims he was framed.
Framed for murders he was convicted of with forensic evidence.
Yep. And it doesn't stop there. He plans to sue Netflix and the BBC.
Over the Serpent series?
Yes. And on top of all the lawsuits, he's published a memoir called Moi, le Serpent. Me, the Serpent.
That just seems incredibly counterintuitive. If you've somehow gotten away with it, or at least served some time and got out early, why on earth would you draw attention to the specific crimes you were convicted of? Why poke the bear?
Because for Sobhraj, the only thing worse than being a prisoner is being anonymous.
Ah.
One of the criminological studies in our source stack points out this exact trait. His biggest fear appears to be anonymity. He doesn't fear jail. He's mastered jail, which we'll get to. He fears being forgotten.
So the lawsuits, the book, It's all a PR campaign.
Exactly. He's trying to rewrite the script. He wants to be remembered as a dashing smuggler, a rogue, an adventurer who outsmarted the system.
Anything but a serial killer.
Right. He wants the glamour without the gore.
Ah.
He desperately needs to control the narrative.
Well, let's strip away the glamour then. Let's go back to the reality he is trying so hard to hide. We really need to talk about the 1970s and the architecture of his crimes on the Hippie Trail.
We do. And for listeners who might not be familiar with it, the Hippie Trail wasn't just a bunch of people backpacking. It was a massive cultural movement.
A completely different world.
You have to imagine a steady, porous stream of young Westerners, kids from Europe and America overlanding through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and then down into India, Nepal, and Thailand.
Looking for enlightenment?
Enlightenment, cheap drugs, or just a total escape from Western capitalism. And remember, this is the era before Lonely Planet guides, before the internet or cell phones.
And crucially, these kids were often carrying large amounts of cash because ATMs weren't a thing, but they were also incredibly street poor in terms of local knowledge.
And they were trusting. That is the key variable here. The entire vibe of the trail was peace and love.
Right.
You shared your food, you shared your room, you completely trusted the stranger who offered you a ride. Sobhraj recognized that specific cultural trust and he weaponized it. He developed this psychological trap that is just fascinating and terrifying. Criminologists call it the helper-trickster dynamic.
Okay, walk me through that. How does the helper-trickster thing work in practice?
Well, he wouldn't just mug someone in an alley that was too crude, too risky. He would befriend them. He'd pose as a wealthy gem dealer or a sophisticated local guide.
Wearing the nice suits, looking the part?
Exactly. He was charming, impeccably dressed, spoke multiple languages. He would gain their absolute confidence, and then he would poison them.
But not to kill them instantly.
No, and that's the truly twisted genius of his method. He used specific drugs, things like Largactil or dysentery medication, or heavy sedatives like Mogadon. He would slip it into their drink or their food to make them violently ill.
To simulate food poisoning or a local bug?
Yes. Then, when the victim was completely incapacitated, he would step in as their savior.
The helper.
The helper. He'd say, oh, you have the local stomach bug. It's very dangerous here. Come back to my apartment. Let me nurse you back to health. And he physically moved them into his home.
I see. So he creates the problem just so he can be the solution.
Precisely. It created this massive psychological debt. Think about it from the victim's perspective. You are a sick, terrified kid in a foreign country. You can barely stand up, and this nice, sophisticated, wealthy man is cleaning you up, feeding you, giving you quote-unquote medicine.
Which is probably just more poison to keep them weak.
Exactly. The victims became totally dependent on him for survival. They were weak, confused, and profoundly grateful. And by the time they realized what was actually happening, he already had their money, and more importantly, their passports.
The passports. That seems to be the currency he valued most in all of our sources. Why was he so obsessed with their passports?
Because passports were his literal keys to the world. Remember, this is the mid-70s. There's no biometric data. There are no digital birder databases.
Right, it's all just paper and ink.
Just paper. He would steam open a stolen passport, swap the victim's photo for his own, stamp it, and suddenly, he was that person.
The ultimate identity theft.
He created what one source calls a maze of stolen, shifting identities. One day he's crossing a border as a Dutch student. The next day he's a French businessman. It allowed him to travel effortlessly.
But the Helper Act eventually escalated. We have to talk about the sheer brutality of it. It wasn't just theft and drugging. He became known as the Bikini Killer.
Yeah, the violence was horrific. And in his eyes, it was often purely pragmatic. The Bikini Killer moniker came from one of his first known victims, Teresa Knowlton. She was found drowned in a tidal pool in Thailand wearing a floral bikini.
And originally they thought it was just a tragic swimming accident, right?
They did, but then another woman, Charmaine Carew, was found in similar circumstances. The bodies just started turning up.
And the Dutch couple, Henk Bentanja and Cornelia Hemker. The details in the criminological reports on them are just, they're hard to read.
They are horrific. They were strangled and then burned while they were still alive.
Just brutal.
This wasn't just a robbery gone wrong. This was systematic elimination. He viewed these people as liabilities. Once they were no longer useful to him, or if they started asking too many questions and threatened to expose his operation, he liquidated them.
That specific word, liquidated. He actually uses that word to describe it, doesn't he?
He does. In interviews over the decades, he has actively admitted to liquidating people for business reasons, while in the very next breath claiming he never actually killed anyone.
It's a staggering cognitive dissonance.
It really is. He treats human beings as disposable assets on a balance sheet. If you are useful, you live. If you are a risk, you are liquidated.
And he didn't run this horrific operation alone. The sources highlight his accomplices: his girlfriend, Marie-Andre Leclerc, and his enforcer, Ajay Chowdhury.
Yeah, it was essentially a cult of personality, but with a membership of only 3. Chowdhury was the muscle. He was the one who likely helped with the physical violence and the disposal of the bodies.
And what happened to him?
He eventually just vanished. The prevailing theory among investigators is that Sobhraj liquidated Chowdhury too, the moment he became a liability.
Wow. And Leclerc?
She went by the name Monique. She is a very tragic, complex figure in this story. She was a French-Canadian tourist that he seduced and completely brainwashed. She became fully complicit in the poisonings.
Blinded by love, as one of the biographies puts it.
Exactly. She was the friendly, unthreatening female face that made other female travelers feel safe enough to go back to their apartment.
It's terrifying because you can see exactly why it works so well. But while the local police in places like Thailand were just writing these deaths off as drug overdoses, basically saying, oh, it's just stupid hippies taking too many pills, there was one guy who wasn't buying it at all.
Herman Nippenberg.
The nemesis.
Yeah.
The Dutch diplomat.
Though diplomat almost makes him sound too high-ranking, he was a junior officer in the Dutch embassy in Bangkok. Investigating murders was absolutely not his job.
He was supposed to be pushing paper, right?
Handling visa issues and lost passports. But when those 2 Dutch travelers, Henk and Cornelia, the couple we just mentioned, went missing, Nippenberg just wouldn't let it go. He was incredibly dogged.
The sources describe Nippenberg almost as the total antithesis of Sobhraj. Where Sobhraj thrives on chaos and lies, Nippenberg is all about meticulous bureaucratic order.
That's the perfect way to frame it. Sobhraj completely relied on the porous chaos of the Hippie Trail. Nippenberg brought rigid order to it. Since the Thai police weren't acting, Nippenberg and his wife, Angela Kane, essentially started doing the police work themselves.
With the help of Sobhraj's neighbors, Nadine and Remy Juris.
Yes. They dug through the trash outside Sobhraj's apartment, they collected abandoned diaries, they cross-referenced dental records of the burned bodies, they painstakingly built this massive dossier of evidence, the Nippenberg file.
And that file isn't just a neat footnote in the story, it becomes the literal smoking gun, doesn't it?
Yeah. It is the Chekhov's gun of this entire decades-long saga. Nippenberg compiles this airtight dossier in the 70s, and it essentially sits there, waiting in the dark for decades to deliver the final blow. It's proof that facts, when meticulously preserved, can outlast the world's best liar.
So Sobhraj is wreaking absolute havoc in Thailand, but he eventually slips up and is caught in India in 1976. And this part of the deep dive, I had to read the source twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. He tries to drug an entire tour group of 60 French students at once.
60 students. It was pure hubris. He was in New Delhi, and he just thought he was completely untouchable. He decided to drug an entire busload of postgrad students to steal all their passports and cash in one massive score, but he messed up the formula.
I miscalculated the dosage of the drugs.
Yeah, the drugs hit them way too fast.
Yeah.
Instead of getting sleepy later on in the privacy of their hotel rooms, they started collapsing right there in the hotel lobby. Just vomiting, passing out on the floor. And the students who were still standing realized exactly what was happening, saw him distributing the pills, and physically tackled him. They pinned him to the ground until the Indian police arrived.
So he gets arrested and goes to Tihar jail in India. But calling it jail seems like a very loose term for what he experienced.
He was known as the King of Tihar. This is where the legend of his manipulation really cements itself. He wasn't living like a normal prisoner. He heavily bribed the guards.
Right.
He had gourmet food brought in. He had his own television. He was casually giving interviews to Western journalists from inside his cell. He even secretly recorded prison officials engaging in illegal deals so he could blackmail them. He essentially ran the entire facility.
Incredible. But the real genius of his time in India, and I use the word genius regarding his strategic mind, certainly not his morality, came a decade later. In 1986.
The Great Escape.
Right. He's nearing the end of his sentence in India, and he decides to break out.
He throws a massive birthday party for himself inside the prison. He invites the guards, the warden, the other inmates, and he hands out sweets and fresh fruits.
Which are heavily drugged, of course.
Naturally. Everyone passes out, guards included, and Sobhraj simply walks out the front gate.
But here's the thing that really twists my brain. He escapes, he travels down to Goa, and then he basically lets himself be caught. He's just sitting in a restaurant, and Inspector Mapukar Zende walks right in and arrests him. Why? Why go through the trouble of breaking out of a high-security prison just to let yourself be taken back in?
This is the ultimate aha moment of the case. This is Sobhraj playing 4D chess with the international legal system. At that time, he was finishing up his sentence in India. But there was a massive, lethal problem waiting for him on the outside.
Thailand.
Thailand had an active warrant out for him for the murders of Teresa Knowlton and the others. And in Thailand, the punishment for those crimes would be the death penalty.
Okay, so if India releases him on a scheduled date, they just deport him straight into the arms of the Thai police, and he gets executed.
Exactly. He was a dead man walking if he was released on time. But he knew that the Thai statute of limitations for those specific crimes was 20 years. He had only served about 10 years in India. He desperately needed to stay in an Indian prison longer to run out the clock in Thailand.
So by escaping and getting caught on purpose?
He caught a brand new charge in India, prison break.
Which added 10 years to his sentence.
Yes, he deliberately extended his own prison sentence in India to save his own life. He used the Indian judicial system as a literal shield against the Thai executioner.
Yeah.
He did the math, he waited it out, and when 1997 rolled around, the Thai warrant legally expired.
That is, it's profoundly evil, but it's brilliant. He treated the international legal code like a logic puzzle.
And it completely worked. He was immune from prosecution in Thailand. He walked free from Tihar jail in 1997 and went back to France a free man.
And he immediately cashes in on his infamy. The sources say he was charging $15,000 for a single interview. He's living this bizarre celebrity criminal lifestyle in Paris. And then in 2003, he does the one thing that makes absolutely no logical sense. He voluntarily travels back to Nepal.
Returning to the scene of the crime?
Why? Why return to the one country where the statute of limitations hadn't run out? The one place on Earth where he could still be arrested for murder?
Theories in the criminological community vary wildly on this. Some sources suggest he genuinely wanted to set up a mineral water business and thought his old underworld connections would protect him.
A mineral water business?
Yeah. Other sources say he was just bored of Paris and missed the thrill of the con. He even tried to tell one reporter that he was there working as a CIA spy tracking the Taliban, which is...
just a classic Sobhraj fabrication.
Exactly. But the prevailing theory among experts is simply pure hubris, arrogance. He truly thought he had outsmarted everyone. He thought all the evidence from 1975 was long gone. He basically thought, I am the Serpent. I can go wherever I please.
And he forgot about Herman Nippenberg.
Yeah, he absolutely did. A journalist working for the Himalayan Times happened to spot Sobhraj gambling in a casino in Kathmandu. The paper ran the story. The local police saw the headline and immediately arrested him.
And Sobhraj denied everything, right?
Of course. He claimed he'd never even set foot in Nepal before 2003. He claimed it was a case of mistaken identity. But the Nepalese police reached out to Nippenberg, who was retired by this point.
And Nippenberg still had the file.
He had never thrown a single piece of paper away. He dusted off his 1970s dossier and sent it straight to Nepal. And inside that file were the original hotel registry cards from 1975, complete with Sobhraj's own handwriting. It was the physical, undeniable evidence linking him directly to the 1975 murders of Connie Jobranzic and Laurent Carrière.
But Sobhraj still tried to fight it in court. I saw in the case notes that he tried to use some technicality about a passport date to build an alibi.
He's always looking for the bureaucratic technicality. It's fascinating. He pointed to a stamp in a stolen passport, specifically the passport of his Dutch victim, Henk Bentanja. The stamp said April 7. So Sobhraj argued to the court, look at this stamp. This passport was used to enter Nepal on April 7, but I can prove I was in Athens on April 7, so the killer couldn't possibly be me.
That sounds like an incredibly solid alibi, if it were true.
Except the forensic investigation proved that April 7 wasn't an entry date stamp at all. It was the date the passport was originally issued to the victim back in Holland.
Wow.
Sobhraj was just trying to confuse the Nepalese judges with a mountain of paperwork, banking on the hope that they wouldn't check the minor details. But this time, his luck finally ran out. The facts buried him.
And so, he gets a life sentence in Nepal. Oh, and we have to mention the bizarre prison marriage.
Right, Nihita Biswas.
While serving his life sentence, he marries his lawyer's daughter, who is 44 years younger than him.
It just highlights his constant need to exert control and charm. Even from behind bars, he never stops manipulating the people around him.
Which brings us fully back to where we started. The senior citizen release in December 2022, she's out. And now we have this massive pop culture explosion surrounding him. The Serpent on Netflix, the new 2025 Black Warrant series in India, a film about Inspector Zende. Why is the public so obsessed with this guy?
Well, true crime is having a massive cultural moment, obviously, but Sobhraj specifically appeals to that dark glamour trope. When people watch these shows, they look at the tailored suits, the stolen gems, the pool parties, the exotic Asian locations, and they temporarily forget about the burning bodies. He represents this twisted kind of freedom from morality, freedom from international borders, that is strangely captivating to an audience.
But the sources are very clear that Sobhraj absolutely hates the Netflix show. He's furious about his portrayal.
He hates it because he didn't get to direct it. He's a malignant narcissist. He wants to be portrayed as the anti-hero. But the show actually portrays his victims as real human beings. It shows their terror and their suffering. It shows the sheer, unglamorous nastiness of poisoning someone's tea. It completely strips away his cool veneer and exposes him as a predatory small man. Sobhraj wants to be the dashing protagonist. The show makes him the monster.
It really is a narrative war at this point. On one side, you have the celebrity criminal eating cheese in Paris, selling his memoir, claiming to anyone who will listen that he was a spy, a legitimate businessman, a victim of a corrupt system. And on the other side, you have the historical reality of what he did to those trusting kids on the Hippie Trail.
And that's the underlying danger here. If we buy his new book, if we tune into the paid interviews where he claims he's innocent, are we just participating in his final con?
It circles right back to that chilling word you brought up earlier, liquidating.
Exactly. To Charles Sobhraj, other people are nothing more than transactions. If you can help him get money, a passport, or fame, you're an asset. If you can't, you're a liability to be swiftly removed. That fundamental worldview hasn't changed just because he turned 78. It hasn't changed because he had heart surgery.
It's a deeply disturbing thought to leave on. We started this deep dive by looking at a man casually enjoying a hot bath in Paris. But the true cost of that comfort was decades of manipulation, exploiting legal loopholes, and a trail of bodies across a continent.
And the fact that he's out there right now, likely planning his next lawsuit or media deal, it just proves that if you know exactly how to play the system, justice is not always a guarantee. Sometimes the bad guy really does win the long game.
A sobering takeaway. But it also leaves me with one final thought that wasn't explicitly in the sources, but it feels so relevant now. We look back at the 1970s and think, oh, those naive backpackers, no cell phones, no internet. But if you think about it, in our hyper-connected digital age, are we actually any safer from people like him? If you were stranded in a foreign city today, your phone is dead, your digital wallets are locked, how quickly would you accept help from a charming, well-dressed stranger offering you a place to stay?
That is a terrifying point. The technology has evolved, but the underlying vulnerability of human trust hasn't changed at all.
Exactly. We might be immune to stolen paper passports, but the helper-trickster dynamic is a hack on human nature, not technology.
The chameleon just changes colors to match the modern background.
Something to mull over. That's it for this deep dive into the mind of the serpent. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and maybe, just maybe, keep a very close eye on your drink.
And your passport.
See you next time.